It's Murray's time in the sunshine of centre court once again.
He's got it! The Tigers have won by a point!
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of The Final Score. If it's happened in the last week of sport, we'll be talking about it. I'm Rudy Etzel, sitting in the host chair for Val Febo this week, who's sick. He's infirm. We're in form. I've got senior editor of Outside 90 with me, Joel Frucci. I know how you love that title, mate. Yeah. How's your weekend?
It was good, mate.
Enjoy a spot of sport, did you?
Yes, there was a lot to soak in, but yeah, it was really good. Really enjoyable.
Wonderful stuff. I've got Morgan Harding. She's a writer for #Basketball, co-host of the 8 podcasts. Wonderful to see your face here. One of my favourite people to have down here in the Upstart Bunker.
I appreciate that.
How's your weekend?
Good. Fantastic weekend.
Josh Campbell.
How you going?
I can't remember what they call you on Breakpoint Podcast, but I wasn't going to call you that anyway.
Just go with generic Josh. It's fine.
Generic Josh from co-host of the Breakpoint Podcast. It's great to see you. We'll kick off as we usually do with our moments of the week. I'm going to go first because I'm the host and I'm setting the agenda today.
That's fair.
And I think everyone knows what it's going to be. Yeah. Isaac Smith, the missed set shot after the siren, Geelong Hawthorn Friday night. It was a seesawing encounter. It was frankly horrible to watch as a Geelong fan. And I'm not ashamed to admit that when he missed, I cried. Big, heaving sobs.
I don't blame you. I think I did a little bit as well.
It was just pure release as a Cats
I don't think
fan.
since Jimmy Bartel I've seen Geelong celebrate a point that much.
I don't think I've ever seen anyone. Sydney, Tony Lockett, 1996. That's about it.
That's probably about it.
Probably the next most celebrated point of all time. It was... oh boy, yeah, we'll get on to that anyway. So Joel, what was your moment of the weekend?
Mine came from La Liga in Spain. Deportivo Alaves beat Barcelona 2-1 at the Nou Camp. Probably one of the surprises of the new European season so far. You could probably say that Barca's arrogance cost them a bit because they rested Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez, probably with Champions League in mind midweek when they're playing Celtic. But just to put into perspective the size of the clubs, Alaves' estimate for the value of their squad, 40 million euros. FC Barcelona are approximately 757 million euros.
Wow.
Yeah, so
that's
quite the upset there.
That's steep.
That's about as big as upsets get, really, in world sport. Anytime anyone beats Barcelona, pretty much.
True.
Morgan, what about you? What did you take note of this weekend?
Mine comes from the Paralympics. Australian Madison Elliott won the gold in the S8 100-metre freestyle final, and it was a Paralympic world record, 1 minute 4 seconds.
Brilliant. So already our Paralympians are better in the pool than our Olympians.
Yep. Basically.
All right. Good to know. And Josh, your moment of this week?
Well, it goes to college football over in America with Central Michigan executing probably the greatest Hail Mary play in college football history. Their quarterback, Cooper Rush, held a 42-yard Hail Mary, which in itself was impressive. But when the receiver, Jesse Kroll, received it, he immediately threw it back 20 yards to a wide receiver, and he ran it through for a touchdown to win the game.
That's incredible stuff. It went quite viral, that footage,
It went
didn't
extremely viral on YouTube. Yeah, it was very impressive. And winning a college game of football can't beat that.
Yeah, it's literally the dream play, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Hail Mary. When you've given up, the only thing you can do is Hail Mary. We'll start this week with the tennis. It's just happened this morning, our time. Stanislas Wawrinka, he's beaten Novak Djokovic at Flushing Meadows 6-7, 6-4, 7-5, 6-3. And surely Djokovic was favourite, Joel?
Yeah, well, you would say he was world number one. Clearly still the best player in the world. On Breakpoint, actually, it was quite mixed. We had Murray, even Novak as our picks, but to see Stan win, I guess, was a bit of a surprise. It was another tournament where he's really flown under the radar. Didn't really get much consistency going until probably the quarterfinals when he played Juan Martín del Potro, I'd say. Josh?
Yeah, 100%. I thought with because it really was a Djokovic-Murray type rivalry. Everyone thought, well, they're definitely going to be in the final. There's no question. And it was going to be, this is a time where you feel like Murray finally was starting to show that he could produce like world number one style tennis. And now Stan's come out of nowhere with a backhand that could probably break the sound barrier if he got something near it. Phenomenal effort from him. Especially he lost the first set as well. He was down 5-2 and he was 15-40 in the first. Fought back to get it to a tiebreaker, lost the first. And then he went stroke for stroke with Djokovic in the next three. And just in those key points, he was clinical and he had some brilliant backhands down the line, which just the true Stan way, I guess.
Yeah, you got to give him credit as well. In the third set, there was a medical timeout. It went for 6 minutes, which I think Novak Djokovic called, and Stan kept his head, came back out, and it's very easy to lose your concentration in those moments. But to his credit, kept his head, came back out, and just kept at it. And got the win.
They've got to do something about these medical timeouts because, as much as I understand, it's like it's a 5-set match. Obviously, anything can happen to your body. It seems to be almost a momentum swing more than anything else. People are using them because, I've got a little niggle in my shoulder. I'm going to have a 5-minute timeout to hopefully get the momentum back on my side, I guess.
So you think they're using them tactically?
I obviously you can't say that because everyone's going to be like, no, I'm definitely injured. Clearly, you can see the bulge in my shoulder. But it feels like they're always calling timeouts at really negative aspects in their stage of their game and using it to hopefully swing it back in their favour.
Well, it's a professional sport.
I know if Val would agree. No would be doing anything to
Val,
win.
by the way, wanted to make sure that we registered his pleasure at Djokovic losing, more so than Wawrinka winning. Are we witnessing perhaps a subtle shift in the power dynamics of tennis here, guys? What do you reckon?
If it had been Murray, I would have 100% agreed. But Stan in particular is one of those players who, at his best, is as good as everybody else. I just find sometimes he'll lack consistency, especially at Grand Slams. He can get knocked out at 3rd round, 4th round, and maybe we'll see how he goes into the 1000s tours later in the season.
Yeah,
but
I don't think it's more of an expansion of the upper echelon, I think, or a changing of the upper echelon. I just think it's more of an expansion of the big five, if you like, now.
Yeah.
I think we can say it's Novak Djokovic, Roger Federer, Andy Murray.
When was
Stan
the last
Wawrinka.
time Roger Federer won a Grand Slam? Off the top of your head.
Hasn't been for a while. I think 4 or 5 years.
Can
it's
you
been a while.
realistically include him in that group anymore?
I think so. Yeah,
I think
he's
you
hanging
can
around.
always, anytime Roger's still technically able to play tennis, if he hasn't retired yet,
He
he's still
hasn't
considered it.
won a Grand Slam in 5 years.
Oh, he's
He's
the
made-
greatest of all
He's
time.
made numerous
He's-
semi-finals. He is the greatest, one of the greatest of all time. Could arguably listed as the greatest of all time. But he's still he made the semi-finals of Wimbledon. He's been consistent constantly throughout the last 15 years.
I just think that he and Rafa Nadal have dropped a tier here, and I think that Wawrinka will overtake them both. We'll move on to the women's game. Angelique Kerber, she beat Karolina Pliskova 6-3, 4-6, 6-4. She became the new world number 1 in tennis, and that is a palpable shift.
Yes,
Yeah.
extremely.
Well, Serena Williams has been up the top there for God knows how long. So long that I've actually forgotten when she got there. So it's a massive turning point for women's tennis.
Oh, 100%. And it's just the way Serena Williams plays her tennis, you feel like, she could be playing into her late 40s. She could absolutely phenomenal with her power and her aggression as a tennis player. But you feel like every time I say, this is the time, Serena, she's no longer number 1, maybe she's going to start fading, I feel like she could just win the next 2 Grand Slams.
Yeah, well, that's it. She's got the game that a lot of the girls don't.
She did lose the semi-final against probably the most informed player in the competition in Pliskova, who just won a previous tournament in Toronto and made the final of the women's tournament as well, and pushed it to 3 especially after taking that second set. You thought that there was a massive momentum shift and that Pliskova could actually win a debut Grand Slam, which would have been phenomenal for her.
Yeah, well, she was 3-1 up in the final set.
Exactly.
It was Karolina Pliskova, but it was the unforced errors that did it. 47-17.
And she's had Grand Slam experience. She had a cool head. You could tell, especially when she'd broken back and got in level in that third set, that there was a class above in terms of her mental capacity.
Yeah,
She did mention her mental. She'd been working on her mental game, didn't she, Joel? You've got a quote there from her.
That's true. I think I was really working on my mental thing because I was a little bit negative in the second set, and then in the third set when I was breakdown, I was just trying to tell myself, okay, stay positive and believe in your own game like I did it in Australia. So I was thinking a little bit on the Australia final, and it's just incredible to win my second major in 1 year.
So there you have it. She's worked very hard on her mental thing, and it's paid off.
Mental thing.
Let's move on to probably the biggest story of the weekend, in Melbourne at least, the footy finals, Geelong Hawthorn. I mentioned it off the top. I mentioned it was a seesawing game. It was an absolute modern-day classic, as the Cats Hawks games tend to be. Everyone knows how I feel. Morgan.
How do you feel, Rudy? Give us a taste.
It was actually, the whole game was horrible for me. I didn't enjoy 1 second of it. And even when Smith missed, it took me a full loop of the Geelong song to be able to appreciate that. I just cried for a bit because I was just pure, it was just, like I said, just relief.
Yeah.
Just all of the emotion sucked out of me at once. What did you make of it, Morgan?
It was the first half I didn't rate, to be honest.
As a game?
Yeah, as a game, it was really scrappy. No one was making really good leads or runs on anywhere. But then, second half, Oh, I'm still buzzing over it.
Yeah, like the intensity was always there, but the skill level rose to match
Yeah.
it in the second half, didn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
And it really, like I said, seesawed, and it was an epic battle. The thing that I found interesting about it, I'm not sure about you guys, but the thing I found interesting about it was a battle of such contrasting styles. Geelong ended up 52 over on contested possession, which is a massive amount for a finals game. And then Hawthorn were quite happy to let them do that. And then at the same time, Geelong were quite happy to let Hawthorn have all their uncontested marks as is their game. So they ended up with 107 to 47 in uncontested marks, and they had over 70 more uncontested possessions. So
I think one of the reasons it was so close was because they both let each other play into their opposing styles of football. When Geelong had the ball, they wanted it as congested as possible and try to keep it into the middle, but let Hawthorn, when they had the ball, to let them control it, use that uncontested ball, and that get inside. So that's what I reckon I felt was such a seesawing affair, because it had teams dictating the play for certain periods.
I felt like Hawthorn probably controlled it more, to be honest. I thought that they really were allowed to dictate play probably a little too much as a Geelong fan.
I'll agree with that. They exposed Geelong's forward line completely.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that. Geelong's forward line looked completely incapable of,
Yeah.
completely
football.
incapable. Yeah, for pretty much 2.5 quarters
Yeah.
there was no spark up there. Pretty much took Tom Hawkins to break the momentum with that crunching tackle on James Frawley in the
How
third
many
quarter.
did he kick?
Hawkins, I don't know off the top of
think
my head, I don't have it written down.
Well, he kicked 2 goals.
He kicked
Two.
2. Yeah, and then Josh Caddy also provided of all people, provided a bit of a spark up there. He took a really good contested mark.
Motlop
kick
was
winning goal.
surprisingly good as well.
Motlop was.
I question his
Motlop.
decision making.
Stephen
yeah.
Motlop.
Doesn't everyone?
He was. Yeah, I mean, you sort of have to just let players like that do that.
Yeah.
And he nearly cost Geelong the game with that. Like, we should have taken the ball out of bounds, kicked the point. They went down.
Yeah.
Isaac
I
Smith.
think everyone
Yes,
talked about
50.
like the danger would affect and how they were going to influence the game, and they had 62 disposals between each
They-
other. So
they were both amazing.
They were both phenomenal, but I think not enough credit's going to Jordan Lewis's effort in a losing effort for Hawthorn with 36 disposals and 11 marks. I think 8 of them were uncontested as well.
Yeah, he was remarkable, especially given Sam Mitchell probably didn't have the same impact he's had all season. It was just an incredible game of footy, and now Hawthorn have to play the Bulldogs next week. Geelong are through to a preliminary final. It looks like they'll probably play Sydney, and that's not even the beauty of this final series is that
Especially from now on, there's going to every match could go either
but
way.
no result from here would feel like ridiculous. If
Yeah.
they won the flag. None of the top 4, you can pretty much any of them can lay claim to a grand final. Now, we mentioned before Angelique Kerber going to number 1 as in women's tennis, and how that was a shift in power. Nowhere was a shift in power more palpable than on Saturday afternoon at ANZ Stadium when GWS Giants took down Sydney by 6 goals. Sydney, who'd finished top of the ladder, looked the clear best team in it, and then didn't even look the best team on the park. They were thrashed. They didn't look anywhere near it, really. GWS just overran them, really.
I just would like to formally apologise. I said Sydney would win by 10 goals. I was wrong by about 100 points.
Yep,
Yeah, I had
get
no
that one right.
qualms with Sydney. I was like, on the podcast, yep, done, Sydney.
And then it
Yeah,
didn't
likewise.
quite happen, did it? I remember Val, Ryan, and I all gave the Giants a chance. I think Val and Ryan unequivocally said they'd win. I said it was 50-50. So yeah, fair play to them. But GWS, they didn't really look troubled for most of the game.
not at all.
They just looked like a scary side upcoming, really. And it's hard to say, it's hard to look at them and think they won't make the grand final from here. They'll have either the Western Bulldogs or Hawthorn at Spotless Stadium, where they've beaten both of those sides. They thrashed Hawthorn, beaten by 75 points up there.
Yeah.
It's looks like a debut grand final. It's in their hands, really, a debut grand final.
If they'd won against any other team in the 8, I probably wouldn't have given them a chance at the grand final. It'd still be a bit iffy because they beat Sydney, who I feel like are the clear best in the comp.
Especially in Sydney as well. I mean, obviously the Sydney team as well. It was the clash down rivals. But how do we think ANZ Stadium played into that match?
Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because the SCG is such a unique footy ground. It's so short.
Yeah.
And Sydney play it so well, and then if you give GWS a bit more space, that created a little bit of an advantage for them because it gives their running players, your Tom Scully types, a chance to really hit up
Their
that
midfield,
space.
that's about 8 or 9 players deep.
That's right, and it means that there's a more open forward line for you, Jeremy Cameron. And his third quarter when he kicked those 3 goals that was a coming of age moment happening right in front of our eyes. Not just Jeremy Cameron, but the GWS Footy Club. And I think ANZ Stadium had a huge part to play, to be honest. And if Sydney fans, I think, could rightly feel extremely aggrieved.
Yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
I was going to say, it's interesting talking about that because you talk about that prelim and possibly a grand final. They could be doing that without Steve Johnson, who could get possibly one, even 2 weeks for his bump on.
What did we make of that, Joel?
I actually didn't see that one. Yeah, I was stuck at work, so I missed it.
Alrighty then, no opinion.
Sorry,
Let's move on.
I hope he plays though, because he's one of those finals players that you want to see kicking bags of goals in the big top.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Or bags of points as he did on Saturday.
Yeah, true.
What did you think, Morgan? Do you think he'll get rubbed out?
I think he'll be unlucky too.
Unlucky to get rubbed out?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
Well,
Why?
Like, it wasn't that huge of an incident, to be honest, and it's finals. I think I think they're more lenient during finals.
He lined up Josh Kennedy and elbowed him in the face.
I would say
Yeah.
any other situation, it's a guaranteed 2 weeks, possibly 3. I could see them almost pushing it down to 1, just because it is finals. They do often have a habit of trying to give a little bit more leniency, especially if you want to see who doesn't want to see Stevie J in a grand final.
Exactly.
The scary thing is they don't really need him. I don't
Yeah,
think.
true.
So we spoke about ANZ Stadium. What do you think about GWS getting a home final at Spotless Stadium? It's 24,000 capacity. They might be playing Hawthorn, who have 75,000 members.
Yeah, well, I think Stephen Quartermain raised a good point about this on Twitter last night. He referenced the whole Simmons Stadium debate. It's a similar thing. If GWS can play a final at a venue with a capacity like that, why can't Geelong play at Simmons Stadium rather than the MCG?
Why isn't the prelim being played at ANZ Stadium?
The only reason they played that game at ANZ Stadium was because it was the 2 Sydney teams.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
neutral.
it would have been literally any other team in the comp. It would have been the SCG. They just wanted the extra capacity. But I'm not sure. The thing is about preliminary finals is you're going to get more than 24,000 at any of them, I'd have thought. There's sort of a base level of 40,000 that go to any prelim final. I can't think of a less... just a more poorly attended prelim.
Just in terms of attendance and money alone, I don't understand why AFL isn't putting this game at ANZ Stadium.
I mean, ANZ, the problem is it's just a horrible footballing ground. It really is bad. And I think the NRL probably got their act together and have claimed it that weekend as well.
Yeah. There's something needs to be done when you see Sydney and GWS are going to be in the top 4 winning premierships for the next 10 years, almost guaranteed.
Well,
the Giants at least.
The Giants definitely. I'm not sure about that. We heard from Stephen Coniglio after the game. He said they've been using their early thrashings as a bit of motivation for now.
As long as we have that belief there, anything's possible. And whenever we go out to clinics and talk to young kids, we always talk about how in the early years we got bashed around a little bit, but we always kept our belief and dreamed that one day we can get there. So. I guess the question is why not, but we just need to stay grounded and keep working hard.
Now, when you hear words like that, Morgan, and you think of Shane Mumford, you think of Steve Johnson, you think of these players that have been there and done that, they're a real finals. They're a real chance at winning the grand final, aren't they?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I have to prove that, to be honest.
Yeah, fair enough. But they just look like they don't fear anyone. They remind me of Hawthorn in 2008, and I think it would be pretty similar. You couldn't have a query if they won the flag.
You would have known players like Coniglio and Whitfield had never played in a final before because they just look so calm under pressure.
They looked at home, didn't they? They looked born to play on that big stage.
They're an absolute threat. The feeling coming into that game was I just thought the Giants maybe would have crumbled under that finals pressure. But not only did it not seem that they crumbled, they thrived under that perceived pressure.
Vindication as well for the initial list managers up there who were put under a lot of pressure when they didn't attract a Gary Ablett type. They pinned their hopes on Tom Scully to develop. And then
he has.
And
he has. He's been
100%.
brilliant. And they missed out on Buddy Franklin at that point as well. And it's hard to say. Buddy wouldn't necessarily improve them.
Buddy's first half was phenomenal for Sydney. He kept them in that.
He did, yeah. He was absolutely brilliant. We'll move on to the Bulldogs. They had probably their best win I've ever seen. for them in my lifetime. Away, I think it's their first ever away final win, interstate final win over the West Coast Eagles. Caleb Daniel. What
He
a player.
is so classy with the ball.
He's pure. He's silk, isn't he?
For a young player, he makes such good
SILK.
decisions.
Yeah, he's just phenomenal, and he doesn't make a mistake with the footy. Never wastes a possession.
There's something slippery about him. Like it's almost really hard to tackle him.
I think it's because he's about 4'1".
Yeah, that does help.
Most blokes literally can't grab him because they can't get down that far at AFL level. But he was overlooked until quite late in the draft. But I reckon there's a fair chance he'll be the best player of the lot out of that draft. What do you think, Morgan?
Most likely.
Yeah, it's going to be a star. And this game will also be remembered for Jack Darling again. This is his second final in a row where he's really made a high-profile mistake. He had two in this game that they're going back with the flight, trying to mark the ball, and then hearing the footsteps and bailing out. Prior to that, he'd tried to play on after taking a mark and gotten tackled and given away the holding the ball free kick. But then there's also last year's grand final where he dropped that chest mark that's haunting him. Is he too mentally broken for finals? Is that the case?
Oh, geez.
Not doing the mental thing.
Yeah, well...
Yeah. He needs to get some lessons from Angelique Kerber.
Yeah, work on his mental things. No, but look, that was a bad moment. Maybe he's not. I mean, he's done it a couple of times now. That chest mark in the grand final was a shocker.
Yeah,
it really was.
Yeah, it was absolutely awful.
Especially like in a home elimination final, to be just soft going into a marking contest. Like, if I was a massive West Coast fan at that game, I'd be disgusted at it.
Yeah, as a fan, even look, you can forgive mistakes, but just going hard at the ball and pulling out of a contest, that's what you don't want to see.
It's basic AFL instincts.
It is, yeah.
It's the stuff you learn in under 14s, under 15s.
Let's refocus back on the Dogs, shall we? What a result! Like 2 weeks ago, they'd lost to Fremantle.
Yeah.
In Perth, and that was probably their worst performance of the whole year, I'd say. And then to come and put that up, I mean, they rolled the dice a bit with their selection. They brought back Jack McRae and Tom Liberatore and others. That's an incredible vindication for that. But also, the bye has palpably affected the result.
What do we think this result would have been if it had been the Thursday before this current one?
Well,
I feel like it could have been a very different result.
Yeah, I tend to agree. What do you think, Morgan?
I think the Dogs probably still would have won.
You reckon?
Yeah, but I think it might have been closer.
The West Coast were carrying quite a lot of momentum. They'd beaten Adelaide away, Hawthorn in the 2 weeks leading up. And then sort of to have that halted and I'm not sure the Dogs would have had to come back to Melbourne and go back to Perth.
Well, they just lost to the lesser Perth team in Perth, so now they're coming up against a stronger Perth team. Could you imagine that meant how long they've had to? They've given themselves probably almost 12 days now to prepare it, as opposed to that short turnover.
Maybe they were just keeping their powder dry.
Possibly.
And then the other finals game was a bit of a fizzer, to be honest. Adelaide v North Melbourne.
There was a bit of aggression in that second quarter.
There was, but you sort of never felt like North were in the game. They did their best to keep it up, and then
it was Adelaide's ineffective kicking in the first half that kind of let them down. And then as soon as they stopped, they kind of switched on in that second half. They showed how clinical they were. And from probably 5 minutes in that third quarter, you knew that the result was not in doubt.
Yeah. And then really the big talking point of this game, Eddie Betts. How good is he? Honestly.
Amazing.
He just lives for the big stage.
Yeah.
Really.
Comes out of nowhere. That mark he wasn't even in the contest and he still marked it.
Yeah, he'd literally fallen down outside of the contest, got up and then beat two blokes to the mark. He's Caleb Daniel sized and he's taking contested marks in the goal square.
I feel like Eddie Betts is the one that Bruce needs to get on board instead of Rioli, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah.
I think Bruce disagrees.
Obviously.
You think Betts is a better player than Cyril Rioli?
Yes.
Really? That's a massive claim.
Massive call. He does it weekly.
Cyril Rioli just won a Norm Smith last year.
Yeah.
Cyril Rioli does it weekly too.
Yeah.
I think the thing about Cyril Rioli is that he never wastes a touch. Everything he does is just pure class. He just kills you with one cut.
I think Eddie Betts is a better forward, but Cyril Rioli is a player that even when even when it's not coming and not working for Hawthorn, he can still get himself into the game and make himself useful, like in the midfield, put some pressure on.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing North Melbourne's had renowned for them is their defence, and Adelaide kicked 21 goals against them.
Yeah, it was not they didn't cover themselves with glory, North, did they? And it was not a brilliant way to send out your retiring, delisted.
It was good to see the
stars.
Adelaide fans cheer Boomer as he was coming up.
That was good.
off
That
the
was
ground.
classy.
More class than North, I guess.
Dear me. Treated them with a little bit more respect. How do we see Adelaide going next week? They play Sydney at the SCG.
I'd call it a coin flip, even though it's at home in Sydney. Adelaide, just the way that they played against, even though I know North aren't great, when they play at their best, they're an absolutely phenomenal team. Their forward line structure is incredible. Their midfield were on Rory Sloane's shoulders a little bit, but they're still fantastic. But I reckon they're a genuine shot. If I had to tip, I'd probably go with Adelaide at the moment.
Yeah, Morgan.
Well, whatever I say will be wrong anyway. But
So yeah, okay. Then please tip Sydney. Thank you. And Joel.
Well, I actually think Adelaide as well are gonna get the chocolates. I think Callum Mills, and Kurt Tippett. They're both going to
Kurt
be.
Tippett's a big out.
Yeah, that's a massive out.
I've heard a lot.
But you could see even on Saturday when the Swans lost Mills, they really lost a bit down back. So I think the Crows are going to win.
And in a word, Dogs, Hawks.
Hawthorn.
Morgan.
Hawthorn.
Dogs.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Personally, I'm Sydney and Hawthorn. We'll move on to the NRL. Melbourne Storm, they moved through to a home preliminary final. Their 16-10 win against the Cowboys, who now play the Broncos in an All-Queensland semi.
It was a replay of the final from last year.
Yeah.
So I reckon that game's going to be fun. I reckon that game could be the best game of the season.
The Cowboys-Broncos
The
semi.
Cowboys-Broncos game, yeah.
What did you make of the Storm?
Impressive. I thought they've had such a good build-up into the final series, and then you just thought at home, you just wanted them to be clinical. They weren't exactly clinical because, I mean, you felt like there were stages where the Cowboys were going to come back and make a push, especially when you got Jonathan Thurston. But they won. They got the home preliminary final, and you feel like they're a genuine chance to go all the way.
They look absolutely dominant, don't they? The Storm. They just look unstoppable.
Who do you reckon is the biggest threat to beat him? I would say it could almost be even though Cronulla beat him, I could say probably the Raiders.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. With the Raiders losing that, it's just so hard to win. It's just so hard to win an extra final.
Yeah,
especially in the NRL, they haven't had the bye that the AFL players have had. So, be an interesting one there. We'll move on to the Premier League. I know you would have kept a close eye on this. Joel. Man City, they've won away to Man United in the first Manchester derby. Pep Guardiola and Jose Mourinho reopening hostilities.
Yeah, well, it was another, I guess you could call it a blood versus beauty battle, Rudy. But I think, speaking of shifts, I think now Manchester City have got to be called title favourites even at this early stage of the season. They're looking increasingly better under Pep Guardiola. They're still unbeaten. They probably should have kept a clean sheet. Good old Claudio Bravo coming out and taking out John Stones in the process, dropping the ball.
Probably should have been sent off, I thought. At least,
I think that's a reasonable claim.
That studs up tackle on Wayne Rooney was pretty ugly.
That was very ugly. He was quite shaky. Fair play to Pep Guardiola. He came out after the game and actually defended him. But it was a very
in stark
shaky
contrast to what Mourinho said about his own players, wasn't it, Joel?
Yeah, he was scathing.
Well, I thought
2 or 3 players in the first half that if the game is now and I know what is going to happen, I don't play them. But this is football, and sometimes players they disappoint managers. They didn't give me what I want. Is their fault? Is my fault? Is my fault because I'm the manager, and it's always my fault because it's my choice.
Yes, typically confrontational stuff from Mourinho there. Just quickly, we'll before we go, we'll touch on the cricket. Glenn Maxwell has had a 2020 series to remember. He hit that 145 off 66 balls. It was the best display of hitting I've ever seen.
Message to the selectors.
Big time.
Don't drop me again.
And then in the next game, he's hit 66 off 29. He's gone in as 211 runs in 2 games, strike rate of nearly 300. That's a marked pointed remark to the selectors and I don't think they'll be dropping him from the one-day side again.
Oh, classy shots, that reverse sweep.
Oh, it's just a thing of beauty, isn't
Love
it? If you don't like Glenn Maxwell, you don't like cricket.
Yeah,
agreed.
That's right. And I think with that, we'll wrap up here for the final score. It's I've been Rudy Edsel, been joined by Josh Campbell, Morgan Harding, and Joel Frucci, and we'll see you next week.
But it's Murray's time in the sunshine of centre court once again.
He's got it! The Tigers have